been your impression of what you've seen from this roster this summer?
Yeah, Jordan. So thinking about the roster right now, it's young. I think when you look at especially the skill position points right now, look at the receiver room. Kind of call it 3 of our top 4 in the receiver and DB room are 23 years and younger. So I just think a lot of competition, young guys pushing each other, and just seeing how the rooms are coming together. Where there isn't a lot of veteran voices as you look to some of these rooms as we get around the roster.
Brandon, I realize that every draft pick has hindsight. I want to go back to 2022 for a sec. Everybody was screaming you guys needed an offensive tackle externally, probably internally too.
Right.
How much of that do you think leads to picking Evan Neal, and like a guy like Garrett Wilson, how much was he on your radar? He goes 3 picks later.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about building the roster the right way, the way Joe, myself, Dave, all the coordinators talk about it, we want to be firm in the trenches. And then you talk about positions that impact. Obviously, before the wide receiver market has a boom and you see, guys making $25 million plus, positions that travel, it's tackle. It's you got to protect the quarterback, and the quarterback is king. And I think when you start in the trenches between the tackle and having that synergy, someone to play on the opposite side of AT, that's how you ensure stability.
I know Joe says he goes back and looks at Evan Neal film sometimes to make sure that it was a college film sometimes to make sure that what were we seeing then. What do you think's been behind Evan Neal's slow development?
Yeah, Ryan, I think when you look at the development of players, not just offensive linemen in general, you always want to give at least a minimum 3 years of book of business. We all lived how AT started, right? And everyone has their own path, whether it's coaching changes, whether it's coaching style, whether it's injuries, or just a transition to the style of play. I just think with Evan, he's working to get healthy right now. And I appreciate his mindset right now. He wants to do whatever's best for the team, and I got faith in him. We're not losing any faith in Evan right now. And I think right now, him stringing together good days of practice, going into a joint practice tomorrow with the Jets, and then having that last preseason game, it's all going to be really a springboard for him to get back on the track that he wants to be on.
Brandon, this question is on behalf of Tom Rock, who tore his Achilles and can't be here. So just FYI, because I might have another question a little bit later. How did you find Elijah Chapman?
Well, Kim, give Tom my best, and then ask you a question when you're ready. But just with Chapman, I can't talk about Elijah without talking about our area scouts. Again, them leaving no stone unturned. You're talking about Blaze Bell, you're talking about Justin Marcus, Scott Hamill, and when you go to SMU, you do the really full discovery process on Elijah, where you figure out, okay, what makes him an outlier at his size? Because you're not going to find many 5'11" defensive tackles, right? Well, he was a captain. Okay, he was actually, for his size, he was a 1,600-yard rusher in high school as a running back / fullback. He had a pseudo, call it fullback package on offense at SMU, and Scott sending back, Justin, Blaze sending back notes on seeing him run down on punt coverage and kickoff return. So, and in his background, he's a decorated high school wrestler and power lifter, and he's a son of a lumberjack. So you put that all together, there's a lot of characteristics from an intangible standpoint, and then also the metrics. Leaning on our analytics department. When you look at Elijah, you go through the spring process and you have, your workout warriors from Pro Day. Well, Elijah was a 31 vert guy, a 4.8 40 guy, a 32 bench rep guy, a 9.4 broad jump guy. All those explosive metrics, give him an opportunity for being an outlier. And even though he's 5'11", he's got almost 33-inch arms. So there's redeeming traits where you take the intangibles of how he's built, how he's wired, and figuring out what he can do best. And just, the coaches are motivated, especially Dre and Brian Cox, and that's why I affectionately call Dre Dr. Dre, because there's probably nobody that he thinks he can't fix, and we love that mindset. So it was a group effort from scouting, analytics, coaching. We're glad Elijah's here.
So you were not overly surprised when he made that play in Houston?
No. The effort and the want to, we say that every day. And that there's a cool transition when you start seeing teammates root for guys, when you start seeing Dex rooting for Elijah, taking him to the side, giving him some pointers, because it's like, hey, I could be playing with this guy, or there's something here that I like that I want to help develop. So it's been really cool to see.
Is there a lesson that you guys can take then in your evaluation? I know it's part of your process.
Right.
But just the idea of, you know, a guy like this can go off the board undrafted and then come here all of a sudden, and he was even a tryout here for your rookie camp. So it wasn't even like you guys said right after the draft, we got to sign him. Are there lessons to be had in moving forward about a guy like this? Does he become like remember what happened with Chapman?
All right, so it's funny you say that. So think of it, we look at every piece of the acquisition process as an opportunity, right? When you talk about whether it's a draft, whether it's undrafted free agency, or rookie minicamp tryouts, we want to have as many guys in and around the building that have an opportunity to make the roster. When you look at Elijah, we look at him as, okay, what are the factors that are working against him? Knowing that he's an outlier, right? You're not going to find many sub 6 foot defensive tackles. So we want to acquire him where we guard ourselves against the risk. And knowing that how he may be viewed in the open market for 31 other teams, we want to get, in front of him and get him around us, and not just him, but all players at the right price point. So I just think it was low cost, low risk when we got Elijah. We were excited to get him here for minicamp, and then that chase play that you saw that effort and relentless attitude here during rookie minicamp. It stood out. So it's employing the same process. Not going to change. We believe in it, and it's just taking everything seriously. Like rookie minicamp is an afterthought. It's an opportunity to find a good player that can contribute to the roster at some point, whether it's active, whether it's practice squad, whether it's developmental.
What do you remember about his tryout specifically?
So when you look at Elijah during rookie minicamp, he stands out as being smaller than the traditional defensive tackle. But you look at what he can do. Don't focus what he can't do. Quickness off the ball, him having twitch, and for a guy that's sub 6 foot, just power. When he strikes a bag, you almost feel the air kind of compress out of the bag, and it sounds different. When Dex strikes a bag, you hear it. When certain guys strike a bag, you hear it, and I can turn my back to the pad and I can know it's being struck. So he put his best foot forward, and I think that's part of, Joe's mindset and philosophy is a good player can come from anywhere, and the coaches have adopted that where they don't care how we acquire them. The best guys are going to play, and I think when you look at what Elijah's done, the platform that he's been given, the more reps that he's been given, it's because he's earned it.
What's your comfort level with that second corner spot? And I think people on the outside would say, why haven't they spent and signed someone, off the street who's like a proven guy to fill that spot?
Yeah, Dan. So when you look at the corner position, no different than the wide receiver room, very young. Like when I told you, 3 out of the projected top 4 are guys that are 23 years and younger. And I think there's a kind of a maturation process where there's a synergy between development and the actual physical tools and talent. And we're hedging on the upside of that bet, but there's also still time between now, the cut down process, to also add pieces. We've done this in the past. 2 years ago, adding Fabian Moreau ends up playing for us. Having whether it's Jason Pinnock or Nick McLeod, they're still on the roster. So there's still opportunity points to add if we do feel it's needed, but we want to give our players that are in the building, our young guys, like I said, that aren't even 24 yet, all the opportunity to assert themselves and take reins of a position.
You have significant cap space to make pretty much any move you so desire here as you move forward the next few weeks. How active do you expect the team and the organization to be overall?
Yeah, so Jordan, when you talk about the cap space, it's not just for the cut down, but to me, it's also in-season spending. You want to make sure that you're covering your bases, regardless of if it's now or you're talking about pre-trade deadline or anything that may happen in the first 4 to 6 weeks. So you want to cover all your bases, but we're going to do a due diligence. Anything that may come about in terms of opportunity of a position in need, player that's going to be available for trade that we may not pursue, we're going to do our due diligence and figure out, does it make sense for us?
You restructured Andrew Thomas. Just curious what went into that and the timing and the amount and all that.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about the restructuring, Dan, I think you look at, in my opinion, and Joe and myself and the cap guys, we all share it, is when you have the opportunity to restructure guys that are premium level players, that are durable, and they're what the organization wants to be about from a character standpoint, it's a win-win. So that's really what went into it for AT.
One of the things that surprised people was in recent weeks you had a trade with Dallas.
Right.
How does that come about? I mean, because most people didn't expect that. And is it they have a need and you have a plethora?
Yeah, I think you almost always look at when you're making a trade, one, what does it do for Obviously, your competitor is it in division, which you like you're mentioning. It's a rarity, but then you look at what is the current makeup of the room. If you know a player may be on the outside looking in, sometimes it's better to get ahead of some of those moves, and you know that it's not going to hurt the way we're building things or our plans going towards 53. Sometimes it works out for everybody, but yeah, trading in the division is definitely a rarity, but sometimes it works out for all parties.
Is there a different feeling this year as opposed to last year with the waivers that, you're sitting there at 6 and, last year you admitted, as much work as you guys were going to put into it, you kind of knew, if you weren't going to make any deals, it was going to be hard to get. You're probably going to be 5th or 6th on those guys you claimed.
Right.
Different feel this year, knowing that you probably are looking for some players that might have to contribute right away?
We're always going to be aggressive. Obviously last year we're further down in the claim order, but go back to our first year, we were able to take those swings, get Fabian Moreau, get Nick McLeod, get Jason Pinnock, and we're going to do the same thing again. It may be obviously at different positions, but we want to make sure that if there is opportunity to bolster, especially the back end of the roster, depth, special team contributors, we're not going to apologize for trying to do that. So I think it's going to be meticulous. Chris Rossetti leading us in pro meetings, as well as Tim McDonald canvassing the pro landscape, myself, Ryan Cowden, Dennis Hickey. That's what we're doing. Between these first 2 weeks that have been gone from film plus a Hall of Fame game, and then this last week coming up, it's just figuring out those where's surplus in the market. Where are teams that may have guys that are on the bubble or on the trade block? How thick does it look? And where would we be versus our competitors that may be ahead of us in the claim order or those that may be behind us?
Have joint practices made it harder in that evaluation? It seems like most teams are using the middle of the week where you may not necessarily have film on guys to go into this process versus the preseason where it seems like it's really the bottom of the rosters that people are churning around.
Yeah, so Art, when you talk about the joint practices, there's a strategic component that can be involved in that where if there's a guy that you want to potentially stash from 31 other teams, you may be more comfortable letting one other team have exposure to it versus putting them in, a competitive game situation. But I think for the most part, when you're looking at the joint practices, it's a good way to identify, like I said, guys that are taking hidden reps. Same thing we did when we had joint practice with the Jets. Couple years ago, you see Jason Pinnock, you see what he's doing on special teams and say, hey, can he transition from being a tweener corner safety to just being a safety? And it gives you a certain comfort level for guys on the other team's roster. But yeah, from an exposure to the rest of the league, yeah, there could be a strategic component there, but then also we account for it. We look at which guys we're given high signing bonuses or guaranteed money after the draft, or were drafted in the past couple of years, rounds 5, 6, or 7, and why are they not playing? Have they suffered an injury? Are they getting pushed out? Is there a new coaching regime, new GM regime in the front office where this guy is falling out of favor? And we try to find the reason or rationale behind the player not getting reps anymore, and then we vet it.
What have you
Go ahead, Charlotte.
What have you seen from Daniel? I guess what did you see from him in the preseason game that either gave you confidence or kind of coming back from that injury in his decision making?
Yeah, Charlotte, I think when you look at Daniel in the preseason game, one, I highly respect, and his teammates, both new and old, see how he rehabbed and came back in this time frame. The one thing I take comfort in, and I know there will be continued development in, is his ability to push the ball down the field. Being more aggressive, taking those deep shots. You saw the throw to Slayton. I think just this is the first time in his career Daniel's had 4 receivers that could line up on a 4x1 track team and are creating natural separation. So I just think the more that we have, the gelling, the cohesiveness, especially with that top group, it's going to be, the best outcome for everybody involved. And I think DJ is going to get used to, seeing that separation, having more anticipation on some of these throws. So I'm happy where he's at. I'm glad that, he's able to get his, feet wet after eight months and really attacking rehab.
Where are you at cornerback, particularly behind, obviously, Deontay?
Yeah, I think when you look him at the joint practices, just a premier matchup. Look at our rookie, Drew Phillips, and him matching up with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He didn't flinch. I think the toughness, the quiet toughness that Drew has, and his ability to be sticky in the nickel, him getting really good work every day going against Wandell and matching that twitch at the top of routes, and then seeing a savvy, polished route runner like Amon Ra and not flinching and being able to match up for 2 consecutive days. It was really good to see. So like I said, it's young. You look at Flott. Flott's had flashes in the past where him moving from the inside now to the perimeter, it's giving just more reps there. Where you look at Nick McLeod too. Nick McLeod's the elder statesman in that group, being 26. So it's one of those things where the room is so young. It's great seeing those guys push each other every day. There isn't a comfort level where guys are taking their foot off the pedal. They know they have to earn it every day. And one thing I appreciate about Nick, he is kind of the Swiss Army knife. He's played some nickel, he's played some perimeter corner, he's played some safety, and he brings it every single day with a level of toughness where it doesn't matter what you put on his plate. He'll line up wherever we need. So glad to see him continuing to progress. Glad to see the young guys and Flott and Drew Phillips, what they do alongside with Tay Banks. And Tay's up for the challenge of wanting to prove that he can be a #1 corner in this league. And he knows that he's got to earn it, and it's not going to be given to him.
Brandon, are you in the quarterback market?
When you look at that, I'd say no. I think why would we be in the quarterback market right now? I think DJ coming 8 months off of his ACL injury and having his feet wet for the first time against Houston. It's all a part of the progression process, and it's him getting used to his weapons and us being able to protect him. And I think what the O-line has showed in the preseason right now, there's continued continuity. So we're all think that there's going to be an evolution process here where we can continue to build continuity, and DJ gets comfortable as we get more reps.
So you're comfortable with the quarterback depth chart being Daniel, Drew for week 1.
And Tommy, I think when you look at the 3 guys we have right now, I trust Dabes, trust Kafka, trust Shea, Tim Kelly. I think right now where we're at, they're the plan, and we haven't gotten to game plan specific stuff yet. So I think as you get into week 1 against Minnesota, we'll start getting to more of those game plan specific things and scheming guys in a way that we can attack the defense.
The offensive line was such an emphasis for the front office all off season, and the 5 starters haven't played a snap, if my count's right, in their spots together all camp. What's the concern level there after what happened last year with the offensive line?
Yeah, I think when you look at the offensive line right now, they're starting to have that gel and continuity. It's a different feel in the room. Hats off to Combersillo. The way Com teaches it, he doesn't take anything for granted. He's stripping the rep down, working stunts in games and in practice, and then when you can add guys like Jermaine Illuminor and Runyon and guys that have had, that continuity together, and you add a Greg Van Roten later on, where there's a level of maturity and accountability in that room that feels a little bit different. So I'm happy where it's at, and John Michael, Evan, even some of our young guys that are lesser known in terms of depth players, I'm happy where they're going because there's a level of accountability in that room right now where I think it's pointing in the right direction.